Medicine for both Israeli hostages and Palestinian civilians has arrived in Gaza under a deal brokered by Qatar and France. It's the first agreement between Israel and Hamas since a week-long truce that happened back in November. In a Canadian exclusive, I spoke to the advisor to Qatar's Prime Minister about the deal. Majid Al-Ansari, thank you so much for making the time for us. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
I want to start, obviously, with the deal that Qatar and France have negotiated and mediated to allow medicine into Gaza. That would be for Israeli hostages and for Palestinians. It's my understanding that that has arrived in Gaza. What can you tell me about whether it has managed to reach both hostages and Palestinians who need it?
Well, as you know, Rosemary, the communications are cut right now in Gaza, and therefore it's very difficult to get information from inside the sector. However, what we can confirm is that all the shipment of 11 tons went through the border seamlessly. It was delivered by the Egyptian Red Crescent, the joint French and Qatari effort to bring that medicine into Gaza has worked. The medicine was delivered to the Ministry of Health in Gaza, who are supposed to have delivered it to, first of all, of course, the hostages in Gaza, but also to the people in Gaza who are in need in the most vulnerable areas of the sector.
I understand, obviously, both sides agreed to this deal you negotiated, but it is not, for instance, the International Red Cross who's delivering the medicine. How sure are you that it is going to get to both the hostages and Palestinians?
Obviously, Rosemary, I can't get into the details and specifics of the deal and the implementation of it for obvious reasons, but what I can tell you is that both sides felt confident and delivered in good faith the answers to the agreement. So we do believe that there is a high level of trust between both sides that was done through the mediation, that the deal will be conducted as agreed upon, and we hope that the agreement made in this deal will help us also pave the way for other deals in the future.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that, because obviously you were also integral in the previous pause to allow humanitarian aid in, and you've been successful on this instance. But I would imagine that as the war goes on and positions are further entrenched, it gets more difficult, not easier, to get people to agree to different things. How difficult was it to reach this deal, and how difficult is it to get the two sides talking right now?
You know, Rosemary, Qatar started mediating between both sides since 2006, so we have a long track record of successful mediation between both sides. And certainly, as you rightly mentioned, the escalations on the ground has made it more difficult to mediate since the last appeasement was done and the last deal was signed, and of course the pause collapsed after 7 days. But we maintained the mediation process. We maintained the negotiations between both sides and getting ideas back and forth. And this deal, while it is a small caveat of the mediation process, it was aimed directly at the immediate needs of the hostages and those most vulnerable in Gaza. The ongoing effort in the mainstream of the negotiations to reach an end to this war is still active. We are still pushing for it. We can't lose hope, obviously, because we can't afford to do so, but the situation on the ground is very difficult. Every escalation that happens in the ground makes the job of the negotiations more difficult. Our operations room here in Doha that handles the mediation has been working 24/7. The team, since the first day of the war, has been working around the clock to make sure that any chance for peace can be utilized, any chance where we can get an agreement, whether it be for a small portion like what was done in this mediation, or for the overall picture of the war. All of that has been ongoing, and we are hopeful that in the near future we will be able to get into something more concrete when it comes to the mediation process.
Well, I'll get to whether we can get to peace or not in a moment, but just if I can go back to the issue of the hostages, because there are still more than 100, more than 100 hostages that are still being held. Are there talks right now to get those people released? Do you have optimism that could happen?
Of course, as I said, the negotiation process is ongoing on that part specifically. So obviously within the mediation process, the hostage issue takes paramount position. We've been negotiating for that from day one. There are a lot of difficulties on the ground, of course, starting with how we can maintain the safety of the hostages under the current bombardment. As you know, Rosemary, some of these hostages sadly have lost their lives as a result of the ongoing bombardment in Gaza, and therefore the need to have some kind of period of calm in order to, first of all, make sure that we can ascertain the situation of the hostages in Gaza, but also to push forward more ideas. And that, of course, has eluded us for a long time now. On the other side of it, of course, the talks between both sides are very difficult when it comes to the hostage issue. As you might imagine, every escalation that takes place on the ground gets us farther away from reaching an agreement on how the hostages can be released and when they can be released. However, the negotiation process it's a process that's still ongoing, and we haven't stopped talking to both sides and communicating with all our regional and international partners to make sure that there's always a path towards the release of the hostages and towards peace in the region.
As you well know, on I guess it was Thursday, Prime Minister Netanyahu said that he told the United States he opposes the creation of a Palestinian state as part of a post-war plan for Gaza. Maybe I'll start by getting a reaction to that, but also how that kind of statement complicates what you're trying to do, because I would imagine that it does.
Obviously, Rosemary, and these statements are nothing if obstructive to the effort of mediation, but it also provides fuel to the fire when it comes to the narrative around peace in the region. If we are talking about a chance for peace, we're talking about a chance for peace for both Palestinians and the Israelis. The first and foremost, we have to have partners for peace on both sides. And while we've been, hearing a lot of rhetoric about the lack of a partner of peace on the Palestinian side, these kind of statements make it very clear that on the Israeli side, there needs to be a serious discussion over the future of the Palestinian issue. A lot of players have tried to sideline the Palestinian issue, and as a result, we are at the escalation we have right now. So obviously, it's not in the interest of the Israeli people, it's not in the interest of the people of the region to sideline the Palestinian issue altogether. These kinds of statements cannot be accepted. We have made it clear from day one that there is no other alternative for peace than the two-state solution that is agreed upon by countries in the region, by the peoples of this conflict, and by the international community altogether.
So do you think that Mr. Netanyahu has to go in order to? I mean, obviously, you have to decide who's going to negotiate on the Palestinian side, but do you think that Benjamin Netanyahu also has to go in order for this to be resolved?
That kind of decision, of course, is left to the Israeli people to decide. But we certainly would encourage that all parties involved here, whether it be in Palestine or Israel or around the world, have to maintain a commitment to peace, and that this is the only option for all peoples of the region.
How important are Arab states in getting to that resolution? I know that Saudi Arabia, for instance, has said that the idea of normalization of relations with Israel, which was on the table before all of this, could still be on the table, depending on how things unfold. How important would that be?
Since the Arabs agreed on the Arab Initiative headed by Saudi Arabia, that option was always on the table. And as our Prime Minister said lately in Davos, countless times did the Arabs present ideas for peace and plans for peace that were rejected, sadly, by Israel. And the Arabs remain, our countries remain committed to the path of peace. We don't see any other and obvious path towards peace in the region other than forming a Palestinian state within the 1967 borders and to providing the Palestinians with hope. The only problem that led them, the main problem that led to the situation we are here right now, is that sense of loss of hope, that sense of having no future and no hope in the future. The only way forward for us is to provide the Palestinians with hope, is to provide the Israelis with hope in a future where they can live side by side together. This is not a sustainable situation. The occupation is not sustainable, and the events of these past 100 days have made it very clear that escalation, using military methods, using security solutions, sidelining Palestinians, all of these will only result in more death and destruction on both sides. And from our perspective, we made it very clear from day one that unless both sides agree to live next to each other peacefully, there will be no chance for peace in the future.
Majed El Ansari, we will leave it there. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for having me.